Here's something almost no one talks about, but almost everyone feels. You're behind. Not in everything, not all the time, but in some quiet, persistent way, you're not where you thought you'd be by now. Maybe you're 30 and still figuring out your career while your friends seem settled. Maybe you're watching people younger than you achieve things you've been working toward for years. Maybe you're scrolling through social media and everyone else is getting married, buying houses, having kids, hitting milestones, and you're still here, trying to get your life together. And it's not just envy, it's something heavier. It's the feeling that life is a race you didn't know you were running, and somehow you're losing. But here's what's strange. If you talk to those people who seem ahead, the ones with the careers, the milestones, the put-together lives, a lot of them feel behind too. Behind where they thought they'd be. Behind where they should be. Behind someone else. So if almost everyone feels behind, who's actually ahead? What does behind even mean? And why does it feel so real, so personal, like it's evidence of something fundamentally wrong with you? Because it's not random. The feeling of being behind isn't just in your head. It's psychological, and it comes from three forces you've probably never examined, but that shape how you see your life and how you measure your worth. The first force is comparison. And here's the thing. You don't choose to compare yourself to others. Your brain does it automatically. Humans are social creatures. We've always evaluated ourselves relative to the people around us. It's how we figure out where we stand, what's normal, what's possible. But there's a problem. You don't compare yourself to everyone equally. You compare upward, to people who seem to be doing better than you. You don't scroll past someone struggling and think, well, at least I'm ahead of them. You scroll past someone who just got promoted, just bought a house, just got engaged, and you think, why don't I have that yet? And social media has turned this into a full-time operation. You're not just comparing yourself to the people in your immediate life anymore. You're comparing yourself to everyone, all the time. Curated highlight reels, milestone announcements, carefully selected wins. And your brain treats all of it as accurate data. But here's what you're actually doing. You're comparing your messy, behind-the-scenes reality, the doubts, the uncertainty, the struggles you don't post about, to everyone else's polished, public-facing life. You see their achievements, their milestones, the external markers that make them look like they have it together. You don't see the rejection they didn't mention, the debt they're hiding, the relationship that's falling apart, the anxiety they're managing in private. The comparison is fundamentally unequal, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like evidence. Evidence that they're moving forward and you're stuck, that they figured something out that you haven't, that something is wrong with you. And this is where the feeling of being behind really takes hold. Because you're not just noticing a gap, you're interpreting the gap as personal failure. They have it together. I don't. They're on track. I'm falling behind. Everyone else is moving forward. What's wrong with me? And the research shows this clearly. Back in 1954, a psychologist named Leon Festinger proposed something called social comparison theory. The idea is simple. People evaluate themselves by comparing to others, especially when there are no objective standards to measure against. And here's the thing. Life has no objective standards. There's no rule book that says you should have X by age Y, no universal metric for success or progress or being on track. So what do? We look at everyone else, and we treat their lives as the standard. And when we don't measure up, we don't question the standard. We question ourselves. But that's the first problem. You're not behind. You're just comparing your internal reality to everyone else's external presentation and thinking that's an accurate measure of where you should be. But comparison isn't the only thing making you feel behind. Because even when you're not actively comparing yourself to others, there's still this nagging sense that you're running out of time, that you were supposed to hit certain milestones by now. And if you haven't, something's wrong. That's the second force. Because there's an invisible script running in the background of your life, and it goes something like this. Graduate by 22, career established by 25, married by 30, kids by 35, financially stable, homeowner, successful. These aren't official rules. No one handed you a checklist, but somehow you absorb them anyway. And when you don't hit those milestones on time, when you're 30 and not married, 35 and not financially stable, 40 and still figuring out your career, it doesn't just feel disappointing, it feels like failure, like you're off track, like you missed the window, like you were behind. But here's the question no one asks. Who decided that timeline? Because it's not universal, it's not biological, it's not even consistent across cultures or generations. It's cultural, constructed, and in many ways, outdated. These timelines come from a specific context, post-war economic stability, when jobs were more secure, housing was affordable, and the path from education to career to family was more predictable. But that world doesn't exist anymore. The economy is different, the job market's different, the cost of living is different, life expectancy is longer, people are living more varied, non-linear lives. And yet, the timeline hasn't updated. We're still measuring ourselves against milestones designed for a world that no longer exists. And the pressure to follow that script comes from everywhere. Family expectations, media portrayals, social norms around what it means to be a real adult. Everyone around you reinforcing the same idea. By a certain age, you should have achieved certain things. And if you haven't, something's wrong. But here's what no one tells you. The people who do follow that timeline, who hit every milestone on schedule, aren't necessarily happier or more fulfilled or more successful in any meaningful sense. They just look like they're on track. And that appearance becomes the standard everyone else measures themselves against. But on track according to what? A script that was never designed for your specific life, your circumstances, your values, your actual goals. The timeline is arbitrary, but it doesn't feel arbitrary. It feels like truth. And that's the problem, because you're not just measuring yourself against other people anymore, you're measuring yourself against an invisible deadline. And when you don't meet it, you don't question the deadline, you question yourself. I should have figured this out by now. Everyone else is moving forward, why can't I? I'm running out of time. But the timeline was never real. It was just cultural, and you've been treating it like a law. And that brings us to the third force. Because external pressure, comparison, cultural timelines, those are hard enough. But the real weight comes when you stop seeing them as external, when you make them internal, when they become your own voice. Because here's where it gets really difficult. You can recognize that social comparison is flawed, you can see that cultural timelines are arbitrary, but that doesn't make the feeling go away. Because at some point, you stopped measuring yourself against external standards. You internalized them. What started as outside pressure, what society expects, what your family wants, what everyone else is doing, became inside pressure, your own voice, your own standard, your own sense of worth. And now when you feel behind, it's not just disappointment, it's shame. I should have figured this out by now. Everyone else is moving forward, what's wrong with me? I'm running out of time. I'm falling behind. I'm failing. It's not just that you haven't hit certain milestones, it's that not hitting them feels like evidence of something fundamentally broken in you. And this is the hardest layer to deal with. Because external pressure you can push back against, you can question it, you can reject it. But internal pressure? That's your own mind, your own expectations, your own judgment. You're not just competing with other people anymore. You're competing with an idealized version of yourself that doesn't exist. The version that would have made better choices, that would be further along by now, that wouldn't be struggling the way you are. And the gap between who you are and who you think you should be, that gap creates real psychological pain. There's research on this. It's called self-discrepancy theory. The psychologist E. Torrey Higgins showed that when there's a gap between your actual self and your ideal self, especially when that ideal is based on external standards you've absorbed, it leads to anxiety, depression, and a deep sense of inadequacy. You're not just behind on some external timeline, you're behind on your own internal one. And here's the trap. The more you feel behind, the more you focus on catching up. But catching up to what? To whom? To a timeline that was never designed for you. To milestones that don't actually reflect your values or your circumstances. To a version of success that someone else defined. You're chasing a moving target, and every time you get close, the goalposts shifts. Because enough is never enough when the standard is based on comparison and arbitrary timelines. And you've made that standard your own. So the question isn't just, why do I feel behind? The question is, why did I accept someone else's definition of what ahead even means? And what changes when you stop accepting it? So here's what you're left with. You feel behind because you're comparing your reality to other people's curated lives. Because you're measuring yourself against arbitrary cultural timelines that were never designed for your actual circumstances. And because you've internalized all of it, turned external pressure into your own voice, your own standard, your own proof that you're failing. But here's the thing. You're not behind. There is no race. The timeline you've been measuring yourself against isn't real. It's constructed, cultural, often outdated. And the people who look ahead, a lot of them feel behind too. Because the finish line keeps moving, the milestones keep shifting, and no amount of external achievement ever fully quiets that internal voice saying, not enough, not yet. So the shift isn't about working harder to catch up. It's about questioning the idea that you're behind in the first place. Your worth isn't determined by where you are on some imaginary timeline. You're not failing because you haven't hit certain milestones by certain ages. The life you're living right now, messy, non-linear, off-script, that's not a rough draft. It's your life, the only one you have. And it doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be valid. This doesn't make the pressure disappear. The comparison is automatic. The timelines are deeply embedded. The internalized expectations run deep. But here's the thing. Seeing where they come from changes your relationship to them. You don't have to believe the story that you're behind. You can ask yourself, what do I actually want? Not what I'm supposed to want, not what looks good on paper. What do I actually want? And you can stop treating milestones as proof of worth, because life isn't a race, and you're not losing. You're just living a life that doesn't fit someone else's map. And that's not failure. That's just life. You know, you should watch this video next. I think you will like it.